So we have all been sold a lie about what it means to succeed. We spent 40 years sprinting on a treadmill of upgrades, bigger houses, better cars, exotic trips, only to realize the faster we run, the more the scenery stays exactly the same.
We call it the Hedonic Treadmill, and it's the reason your last vacation felt like a chore by day 4. But 2,000 years ago, Aristotle pointed to a different exit. He called it Eudaimonia. And it's not a destination, it's a way of moving through the world.
Away we go traveling.
Cheers.
Cheers.
There's a financial trap in life that catches almost everyone, and it is the reason why so many people are stuck working high-stress jobs until they're 65 or 67 or older.
It goes like this. You get a raise, you buy a nicer car. You get a promotion, you upgrade your house. Within a few months, though, you don't feel any happier. You just have more expensive bills chaining you to your desk.
So our 2,000-year-old friend, Aristotle, came up with this concept called hedonic happiness, or more recently, the hedonic treadmill.
You keep running faster, making more money, and buying better stuff, but your baseline happiness never moves. You just get more exhausted.
So we realized if we didn't step off of that hedonic treadmill of endless consumerism, we would never be able to retire early. So we completely changed how we viewed our money and our future using a 2,000-year-old concept from a Greek philosopher.
So in a previous video, I talked about how you should stop looking at what you're buying and what you're spending as a function of dollars and start looking at it as a function of life energy. You know, what is it going to cost you in your life to purchase that item? And that leads directly to the hedonic treadmill because, you know, essentially you're taking your hard work and you're rewarding yourself with material upgrades that are mini dopamine hits that you do over the course of your life. And then every time you inflate, you would then adjust to that. The big part of hedonic happiness isn't that it doesn't make you happy, but that humans have an ability to adjust to that level of happiness very quickly. So, you know, once you've decided I'm going to have a car that has leather seats, well, the first time you sit in them, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, it's just a baseline requirement. It's no longer an excitement. It's no longer anything that makes you feel any better. You just have to have it. So every time you add to that, you're just stacking on top and you're making your floor of required expenses for living that much higher. You know, so when you decide to inflate your lifestyle, you're only happy for a short period of time. Now, some items might make you happy for months. Some may only make you happy for a matter of days. So like with this example of the car, you know, I talk about leather seats. You get that new car smell. Everything's great. You feel good when you drive it. You think everybody's looking at you when you're driving. And then 2 weeks later, the new car smell starts wearing off. The leather seats feel normal. You realize that everybody else in traffic is not paying attention at all to your car. And now all you have is a payment that's $400 higher, yet you don't feel any better. You've made your life a little bit better, paying a lot more, but you don't feel any happier. And you're not going to feel happier with that. You've got that car payment now for 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10 years for some of these bigger cars now that people buy, the really luxury cars. And you've saddled yourself with, you know, let's say a 5-year car note that doesn't add anything to your life other than an ability to transport yourself to and from the job that you're using to pay for the car. You know, so those are the kind of choices you have to start looking at. Real life examples, you know, purchasing a new car is a huge hit on your long-term financial independence goals. You know, we had ours. We looked at it when we decided and we decided we wanted to remove ourselves from this treadmill actively. Like we made a conscious decision. We actually removed a car from our lives. You know, we sold a car that was, we actually sold your car. And yep. And then we sold my car, which was newer, and we bought an older SUV knowing we were going to do this.
Because we figured with one car, we could get away with it between the two of us, given being realistic about how much we would both need to use a car. And say a payment is $800 for a car payment. Do you really use $800 in Uber if we needed because Gary worked from home at the time.
Yep.
So we did the math on that and realized we could get away with not as much, so that we weren't, as Gary said, on this treadmill of going to the job to pay for the car that takes you to the job that lets you pay for the car that takes you to the job. And it just onward and onward and onward.
It saved us on insurance, saved us on gas. I mean, there was a lot of costs that we removed by removing a car. Now, that doesn't work in every situation. And there were some times where we had a spot where we're like, we both need a car. And we either figured it out by leaving early and giving each other a ride, or like Kara said, I think we took an Uber once or twice over 2 years.
Right.
It ended up being, maybe we spent $50 on an Uber.
Mm-hmm.
But we had removed a car payment for 2 full years, insurance for 2 full years, gas for 2 full years, all those things. So really big example for us.
And that worked for our lifestyle because Gary was working from home. And I mean, I know a lot of people, especially if you have kids with sports and things, that's not maybe realistic for your scenario. But that's just an example of one of the things we did that to remove ourselves from that. So one of our other examples over the course of our lives that we were able to look back at and see is that we, of course, did what everybody else did. That's almost how we're trained. We're trained to be good consumers. And we did all of those amazing things that make you feel good. That we got a raise, we got a bigger house. We got a raise, we got a bigger house. We both had a career move, we got a bigger house. Well, eventually we were sitting, the two of us, in a house that we didn't really use. And we realized we didn't need it. And all it is honestly more space to clean. And especially in Florida, more space that you have to pay to air condition and more house you have to pay for insurance. And it just got kind of silly. And we looked around and realized the absurdity of what we were doing.
It was fairly absurd, yeah.
It was absurd.
We counted up all the rooms and decided, we didn't set foot in 80% of them. And it's like, why are we having all this? And I think the AC comment is legitimate, because I think the year that we finally decided to sell the house, and we'd kind of been talking about it anyway because of the market, we've talked about the market conditions before. But I think the year we finally decided it, I think our electric bill for AC for the summer months, I think they were $500 and $600 a month.
I thought it was more than that.
But maybe it was. I may have even glossed it over, but it was ridiculous. And, so us going from that amount of space down to a 2-bedroom apartment, so being able to reap the benefits of pulling the assets out of the house and getting those into the market, as well as getting smaller and making our monthly costs significantly less between a smaller place, less insurance, less electric,
less yard work,
because zero yard work
in Florida. In Florida, to own a home, the nature is always trying to take back the land. So we were spending our entire weekends, like we spent all week working for that house to pay for it, and then all weekend trying to keep it alive by weeding and grass and palm trees and bugs and edging and just. It was insane. And then if we didn't want to do that ourselves, then we're paying someone to come in and mow the grass and do the pest control and the weeds and the trees. And it just became like, I'm not a feudal lord trying to take care of a vast property. I don't want to behave like it either.
We didn't have an estate. It wasn't named.
Right. It was a house. And
the Berkshire.
not even close.
No. So yeah, and again, just like the previous example with the car, maybe this won't work in your situation, but it's something you can consider, rather than potentially upgrading your house the next time you get a raise, stay where you are, or if you can, get a little smaller, save a little money on those things, prioritize taking the money that you've added as a raise or a promotion or a bonus and putting that aside for later, save that money rather than making your lifestyle just a little bit better now, thinking you're going to be happy with it and just realizing all you have now is more things to take care of.
And it's a concept of almost like a concept of death by 1,000 paper cuts too.
Yeah.
Because instead of getting a raise and doing like a big trip or a big experience, the money evaporates by, I buy this little thing and this little thing and this little thing. And, well, I'm going to treat myself with this little thing and this little thing and this little thing. And all of a sudden you have a whole lot of empty Amazon boxes and you don't know where the rest of your paycheck went.
Yep.
So that being very realistic is one thing we had to do. So I know nobody wants to hear this, but there's a nasty 4-letter word. It's actually 6 and it's budget, but you got to track your spending and know what you're spending things on. Because otherwise, you've just whittled away all of your paycheck for nothing but a pile of empty Amazon boxes.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to do that either. That's part of that never-ending hedonic treadmill of endless consumerism. I want to experience life, not take Amazon boxes out every day.
Yeah. And I think that the Amazon thing is a pretty good, not analogy necessarily, but it's a good thing to talk about, that, if you have things that are arriving on a daily basis like that, are you filling in? Are you purchasing things because you really need them, or are you trying to fill a hole that you think you have in your life? For, I'm not happy at my job, so I'll just go home and I'll buy a new pair of shoes, or I'll buy a new phone case, or, I saw this new thing on an article and I really want to try it out, or I'm, really big into the new latest trend. Doesn't matter what that is. But if you're doing those types of things, maybe take some time just to evaluate, why am I buying this? Am I buying it because I truly want it? Or am I buying it trying to fill something, that I don't have? And, I think the same thing applies to stuff like DoorDash and, getting, obviously it's a kind of a trope about, cutting out coffee out of your life, paying for coffee and stuff. I mean, that certainly can add up. Most of the big things in life are really where you're going to save your money. Your housing and your car are going to save way more money than you ever could cutting Starbucks out of your life every day. But if you're doing Starbucks and you're door dashing for lunch
and sports betting
and door dashing for
and
dinner,
luxury,
okay, well, now that probably all adds up, and you should consider that. But don't worry about your a couple times weekly Starbucks habit. Is that your life's habit? Are you doing that regularly? Do you never cook in the kitchen and you always order out? Well, maybe that's an area where, as Kara mentioned, the ugly four-letter word of budgeting, or at least tracking your expenditures, comes into play, and saying, how much am I really spending on things? And maybe you are spending too much. Maybe you're putting too much of that in there, trying to fill something, trying to make yourself happy for something that you don't have otherwise.
And we realized that's what we were doing. Okay, so we just gave you a ton of information and examples about the hedonic treadmill. That was Aristotle's concept of the empty satisfaction, the empty happiness you try to create.
Right. He had another concept, and we'll put it on the screen as well so you can spell it, but it was called Eudaimonia. And this was another version of happiness that he defined, but it's more about human flourishing rather than being outright happy. And it's rather than having that dopamine hit, the instant satisfaction of, I want an item, I buy an item, I'm happy with this item for a period of time. It's more about how you can put effort into something that you love, something that you want to do, creating maybe a little bit of friction, and at the end, having a significant reward from the amount of effort that you put into it. So it's more of a deep and lasting satisfaction, more so than a happiness. And it definitely is going to require effort. It might even involve a little frustration and sometimes even some discomfort, but it's that work. It's like anything you've ever done. You can imagine any scenario in your life where you've put in a ton of effort, and when you're done and you're successful, that feeling of success that you have at the end of that is what he was describing with eudaimonia. And that's what we're trying to get to.
So let's talk about what that looked like for us in our personal experience.
Yeah.
Once we realized that we wanted to stop trading our life energy for wages and be able to have freedom, we had to take some cuts, and not painful cuts, but meaningful cuts. We had to change our mindset and change the way we behaved as consumers, and not to be on that hedonic treadmill, but pursue that eudaimonia treadmill of experiences and joy.
Right. And we added friction. We added a little bit of deprivation, in our budget. We added some discomfort in some ways. And like I mentioned, having to take an Uber a couple of times. There was a little bit of times where we didn't get exactly what we want at exact time we wanted because we had an end goal in mind.
And it was worth that because we weren't depriving ourselves as much as we were investing in our future literal freedom.
Right.
So the pain was very temporary because we knew at the end, this was going to be us traveling full time, this having our entire days to create and do the projects we wanted to do. This was not really deprivation in the sense of negativity, but almost like you want to give up on something that doesn't serve you anymore in order to invest in your future.
So you don't have to quit your job or travel full time to apply this concept. You can do it in your everyday life. Let's say, for example, rather than when you get that promotion and you're worried about what you can buy with it, how about looking about who are the people junior to you? You take that promotion. How do you How do you make their lives better? How do you mentor them? Maybe volunteer to give this newfound expertise to other people. Try to flourish in that new role in an entirely different way that might require some effort, but at the end we'll have the payoff of having helped somebody else out, having developed a different set of skills, and being of service to someone in your industry, rather than just benefiting from it, from having maybe a new watch or buying a bigger TV. Additionally, how about something like trying to learn a new skill? Like if you're a complete beginner at something, trying to learn how to play the guitar. If you decide to put the effort into that, or maybe to learn a little language, there's going to be a lot of friction. There's going to be a lot of struggle with that as you go from being a complete beginner to the intermediate stage to the more advanced stages. And all along that, you're going to see your progress. That's going to build true happiness inside of you. That's going to be something that you really, not only are you happy about, but you're proud of, and something you can show off that skill to other people. Those are the types of happiness things that you should be looking for and trying to build in your own lives.
And I would say that also pertains to removing, when you talk about consumption, it's not just the consumption of consumer goods, but the consumption of media. And by consuming, that also means destroying. But instead of consuming social media, like I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, your number one hobby should not be consuming social media. Get another hobby that creates. And that's what this is. That's hedonic versus eudaimonic. So hedonic is the consumption social media, where I took it to the other side. We took it to the other side for the eudaimonia side of things. And I learned how to video edit and learned how to start from page 1 of Google and say, create YouTube channel, and how to post videos and how to make thumbnail and researching it and studying that, and being very uncomfortable and being very frustrated. But I love it. I love this new skill. I love, instead of sitting and scrolling, doom scrolling on all the negative things, because that's just what social media is, I get to create. And our videos will probably never be bazillion-dollar enterprises because we don't do negative things. We love to talk about positivity and give you tools and talk about the successes we've had that maybe can help someone else. That's what we do for the eudaimonia side of things.
So the last concept that we'll talk about here is, when you're talking about the hedonic versus eudaimonic, is you're choosing a purpose over convenience, and in our case, we have Molly, and she's a senior dog, and she requires more work and more effort than, a puppy, or maybe not a baby puppy, but a dog of a the 2 to 10 range that just sort of, does dog things. Molly requires more than that. And there's effort that we have to put into it. And we've decided to modify our travel based on her.
Right.
And we've decided to change how we do it. And we have a lot of extra friction. We have a lot of extra frustration that incurs because we're traveling with a pet in the United States. But because of that, we have a ton of satisfaction knowing, we've made her life better, and we're doing things with her and with us that we can be proud of, because we didn't just take the easy route and say, we'll just stay at home until she's no longer here, and then we'll go off and do our own thing. We're bringing her with us. We're traveling in a more difficult method because we want her to be able to experience the same things that we've been able to.
Yeah.
And it's been very satisfying for us to do that.
Our whole last year of travel was mostly the East Coast of the US. And we make the joke that she's probably one of the only dogs in existence that's been able to pee in every state on the Eastern Seaboard. But it's fun to be able to know that we're giving her these experiences, and to see her enjoy the things, and we are giving her her best senior life. So in summary, so hedonia costs you money, eudaimonia costs you effort, but every dollar that you earn is a choice. You trade your life energy for wages. So you can either use that to turn up the speed on your consumer treadmill, or you can use it to buy your way off of that treadmill entirely.
Getting off the treadmill simply means catching yourself before you swipe your card and asking, is this going to help me flourish, or is this going to make me feel good for the next 15 minutes?
So our homework for you is to think for a minute about what is one lifestyle creep that you could remove from your life so that you can invest in your future time by removing yourself eventually from that hedonic treadmill.
Yep. We appreciate you watching. Hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like to. And we'll see you next time.
Happy traveling.
So we also need to have something about Aristotle in this first part.
Taylor Swift lyric.
No.
She talks about Aristotle. See, in the words of one of our greatest living philosophers.